Welcome to Education 101 with your host, Eric Wolfram. Education 101 is about the amazing education community we have in the greater Spokane area. We highlight the outstanding programs, teachers, supporters, and opportunities of the education community in the Spokane region. Education 101 is brought to you in part by STCU. Here's Eric.
And welcome to Education 101. I'm your host, Eric Wolfram. Washington State history, OERs, which are open educational resources. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And I've got Starla and Leslie Heffernan here with us today. And I'm so excited to be chatting with some of the things you guys have going on out in Central Valley. So, Starla, tell us a little bit about yourself, real quick. And then, Leslie, I'll have you do the same.
I'm a teacher at Horizon Middle School, 7th grade, language arts history.
And an outstanding one is my son has had you as a teacher as well.
Lucky me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, lucky him.
I would second
Leslie.
that, definitely. My name is Leslie Heffernan. I work for Central Valley School District, and I'm the social studies coordinator.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you guys have done some really cool things around the whole idea of Washington State history, bringing in the whole idea of OERs, which are those open educational resources, which essentially I guess the way I explain it is that whole idea of almost a free curriculum, if you will. And so that's what I want to talk about today, because you guys have done some great things to the point where I think it was last year I got to go to one of your guys' presentations and the governor was there, you know, when you guys shared some of the stuff that you guys have been doing. So talk to me a little bit about what you guys have been doing. Why is it so magical? Why is it so great? What's been going on?
Well, I guess the alternate to open educational resources is kind of a textbook, right? So I think that 21st century learning and kids in our classrooms these days, a textbook probably isn't going to be as engaging as other materials could be. So the gift that we were given was during an adoption for middle school curriculum, our district decided to, instead of adopting a Washington State history textbook that every student would receive, and our district was fully supportive of that, our district decided to go with an open ed resource format where we could decide what we wanted to have our kids learn, looking at the state standards and new laws that were coming, and curate our own sources and design and develop our own lessons. And so that's where we started. So
you guys essentially created your own Washington State history curriculum, right? Based upon what was out there. And again, you know, I like the idea of moving away from textbooks and maybe a little more engaged in the whole idea of, you know, shoot, I look at my boys and, you know, I look at what they're engaged with technology and so on as well. So you guys had the opportunity to do that. Talk us about that. How did that work? How did that process, you know, I mean, obviously you guys kind of went, oh, let's try it. What happened?
Well, I think the first thing, you said that OERs aren't free, and I just want to say they might not be free.
Okay.
I think there is a cost associated. I think the costs just shift. So, for example, in Central Valley School District, when we said, hey, we won't adopt a textbook, our district said, well, great, we'll purchase a Chromebook for every 7th grade student. So that's where the cost shifted. And it's still print resource. So 21st century learning is about helping kids decide, right? So we still need print. We're still going to copy a lot of stuff for kids because kids need to hold sources in their hands. But having kids be able to interact with the most up-to-date and relevant resources online. I think that's the magic that we were given with this gift of the Chromebooks in our classrooms. So that's really that's the cost, I would say.
Absolutely.
So any district who is trying to do OERs, there's still going to be a little cost.
So the OER piece, the resource might not cost anything, but being able to put it into and implement. I think implement is the word I'm looking for.
Right.
There's some costs that go along with that. Starla, you've been using this actually in your classroom and implementing it in the classroom. You know, have you seen some differences when you think about the traditional textbooks versus the Chromebooks, like you mentioned, and being able to access the technology? Have you seen some changes in the kids and their engagement?
Oh, yes. We've had Chromebooks for 4 years, one-to-one. It's been fantastic. Students can access the curriculum. They can access everything. We usually use Drive and Classroom, and
Yeah,
yes.
and so do you think, and along with that, I know that they're accessing some of those. Are they doing, would you see this more as kind of project-based type stuff that the kids are
I
working
think it's
on?
way
or-
more interactive. I think when we build the curriculum with our team, we spend a lot of time thinking about how we want the end product to look.
Yeah.
And the great part about the OER is that we've taken the standards and we've taken the essentials and we've taken everything that we need to put in there, and then we've said, here's a link and here's some options as the way that you can teach this and guide your students through this. If you see something else that works, have at it, send us pictures, we'll share it with everybody.
About how it
So it
goes.
becomes this, it just completely builds on what we've already created because people are coming up with new ideas.
Absolutely. And that's the other nice thing about it, is it sounds like it's out there, but the nice thing is being able to find new things and try some different things as well and see what works, what doesn't work, and how do we consistently make changes to do what's best for the kids.
Absolutely.
And I think the thing I'm most proud of with this group, and it's a big team. Kim Trent, Audra White, Starla, myself, Sandra Belfry, who's no longer with us, and others, Sherry Holm. We got together and we designed and developed this curriculum. The opportunity for us to have more of a place-based curriculum for Washington State history was what came to us a few years ago with the passage of a state bill that said that you shall work with your closest tribal neighbors.
Absolutely.
So we were so lucky to partner with Warren Saylor from the Spokane Tribe of Indians, and we developed a curriculum the first year, and then this new bill was passed, and we learned about it, and so we got to redesign and develop it again. But it's completely centered around the Spokane Tribe and the tribal lifeways of the people who have been on this land since time immemorial. So our 7th graders have an opportunity to deep dive into people who've lived here since time immemorial. So that's what I think I'm most proud of with this curriculum.
And I think that's a real important piece to go along with the Washington State history. And I love the idea, and I think that what you're saying with the whole place-based curriculum is the idea of studying not Washington State as a whole, and I think we have a tendency to hear a lot of the West Side version of things, but to be able to talk about what's happening and what was happening on the land that Spokane is on and that we live on now, or even in the outlying areas within our ESD region. What's going on with that land as well?
Yeah, when we were building this, we thought we want to bring it home. And now that we have the Spokane Tribe, we've learned so much, and Warren's come to talk to each of our classes, our grades, for 4 hours during a week, and share artifacts and stories and tribal history, and the kids are captivated. And the kids are also able to say, I've been there, oh, no way, and see pictures of where they've grown up rather where someone else grew up.
Right.
We're really, really honored that we get to know him and know his story. And it's not the stories that we were told as children. So I think that's the beautiful part, is that these kids will move away from Spokane, possibly, but they'll have a history of Spokane.
Right. And I really think that relevance piece is so important, whether it's this or whether it's anything that we're learning, kids are learning, any of that, if we can make connections to it. I think in education we talk a lot about accessing that background knowledge, but if it's talking about something where you've never been, you have to kind of use your imagination. I think that's hard. So to be able to bring it to exactly what you were saying, Starla, the idea of, I've been to this place and I can relate to that, all of a sudden it makes it so much more meaningful.
Yeah, and when we taught this curriculum the first year, our question changed drastically from the first year to the second year after we knew the Spokane Tribe. We knew that we could no longer ask the question about, was the U.S. justified in their treatment of the Native Americans. We knew after knowing the Spokane Tribe that we could never ask that question. And it was enlightening for our
So how
students.
did you change it? What was the question after that?
Our question is,
Well, we decided to really focus on the
Uh-huh.
Spokane Plains Wars of 1858,
Okay.
which almost no one in this area knows. Even when I talked to Warren and my friends at the Spokane Tribe, they didn't even learn this history. But from May to October 1858, the U.S. Army pretty much went scorched earth on the Native Americans in this
Wow.
region. And if you've heard of the Battle of Four Lakes, the Battle of Spokane Plains,
Okay.
The
the
horse
horse
slaughter.
slaughter, Qualshin, the hanging at Qualshin, if you've heard of these, they're all deeply connected, and they're all memorialized in a certain way with these, memorials that are built. You
Right.
can see the one at Four Lakes. They all tell a very specific story. And what we ask the kids to do is, our big compelling question is kind of this memorial question, like, have they been memorialized accurately? And knowing what we now know, what would we say? If we could write a memorial to this, what would we say?
should they be amended? Should they be torn down?
Right.
Or should they completely be rewritten? And with all the talk in New Orleans, we watched the speech from the mayor there, and that was really interesting about
The Civil War memorials.
the Civil War
Yeah.
memorials. It was really interesting. A professor got on there and said that it would be really interesting to have a African American memorial here that's glass to be able to see through to generally. So
Right.
you had this memorial, but then you were able to see through, so that
Yeah,
you were
that-
honoring both stories, not just one side.
Exactly, and I think you're right. I don't think we always see that perspective. We hear one version of it.
The winner's version.
That's
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
along the way. So and that's an interesting piece. I think what we want to do is I want to continue this because again, the work that you guys have done has been outstanding. I get to see it when I'm out in other districts and connect other districts to you guys as well. But I want to take a quick break. And then what we'll do is we'll come back and talk a little bit more about some of the other things you guys have going on. So we'll be right back after this break.
Last year alone, Avista customers saved over 53 million kilowatt hours of energy. Enough to power more than 4,000 homes for an entire year. Way to save, everyone. Way to save. Find your way to save at avistautilities.com.
See you tomorrow night, and thanks again for taking care of the painting.
I got this.
Bye.
Weekends are made for painting. Let the experts at Rada Paint take care of you.
Hi. This looks amazing.
Rada Paint, over 80 years of quality, tradition, and trust. Find it in every can.
To find the right home for you, you'll work with your realtor to compare the properties you're interested in, analyze the market, and figure out a reasonable offer price. And now, here you are, ready to make an offer. Yay, you! Here's how it works. First, you'll complete an offer sheet which your realtor will then present to the owner. Sometimes, a nice note to the owner can help your offer stand out. Butter them up. Tell them how much you love their garden, that it reminds you of gardening with your grandmother as a child. Do not mention you're gonna bulldoze it and put in a pool. The owner may accept the offer, reject it, or counter. It's important to be in close contact with your realtor during the negotiation process so any changes can be reviewed. Your realtor is like your consigliere, and that makes you the Don. Once your offer is finally accepted, there are usually some contingencies that must be met in order to keep the contract alive. Inspections are totally common in real estate transactions. They include termite checks, surveys to determine boundaries, appraisals to determine value for lenders, title reviews, and structural inspections. This stuff is mind-numbingly fascinating. But you know what's even more fascinating? Actually getting your new house.
And welcome back to Education 101 with Starla Fay and Leslie Heffernan. Today we're talking again about the whole idea of Washington State history, how you guys have built a program around that with the use of OERs. And before we left on the break, we were talking a little bit about one program, the whole idea of the Native Americans of this area. And it kind of ties into the Since Time Immemorial, which is the state curriculum, recommended state curriculum on there. So I want to find out if there's any last things you want to talk about with that one. But I know you guys have some other programs or some other units as well. And I'd like to kind of talk a little bit about that, because although this is a really great and a very important unit, you guys have done some great stuff on the other side as well. So talk to me. What else do you guys have going on?
Well, we have designed and developed. We have our Native Americans of the Pacific Northwest unit focusing on the Spokane Tribe. We've designed and developed 3 other units as well. Mm-hmm. So our semester-long Washington State history course actually does 4 units of study, and they're more deep dive. So the textbook would have had us kind of go a mile long and an inch deep, right? So absolutely, it would have been a survey class, which is totally fine. We wanted our kids to have kind of more of a deep dive experience into some topics. So our first one is Native Americans and conflict in this area up to statehood, and then our second is kind of statehood and turn of the 20th century. So what were the factors of change in our area in Washington State and the Pacific Northwest at the turn of the 20th century? Our third unit is Japanese American incarceration. It originated in Washington State, Executive Order 9066. The first people from Bainbridge Island were evacuated to the Puyallup Relocation Center. And then our last one is Washington State government and being citizens in Washington State government. All right.
And are all these, have they all been done around the whole idea of OERs?
Yes.
Great. That's pretty, again, I think that's a pretty amazing thing. And there's a lot of benefits to that whole idea of OERs, again, those open educational resources. What kind of benefits do you guys see out of that? Have you seen?
I think we call it a living document. We build it, we present it to teachers in the district, and then we get feedback. We're emailing Leslie, hey, this link doesn't work, so that we can provide our teachers with, easy access to, so that's more efficient work.
Right.
I think it's really opened up the different types of texts, so we're not just reading whatever the textbook is, but it's differentiated text in all levels. Sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes we can jigsaw and we can put harder text on one table and easier text on another, but I think it really rounds out the whole picture and provides all sides rather than just one side, so that students can form their own opinions and that we can validate why they're thinking those.
And I think that's, again, getting into that whole idea of the deeper dive, being able to really get into it. Again, before the break, we were talking about perspectives and being able to go into some of those memorials and saying, is it right? But you have to dig deep with that. You can't do that surface look that goes along with it.
Well, in society today, a lot of us watch the news and try to look through the news with different lenses and the social science perspectives. Throughout the district, teachers do that, and when we try to apply history to what's happening today, and then we can connect the two and talk about how it's recursive and how it continues and it repeats itself, and what we might do to change society now or be the change so that things like that don't happen again.
Which definitely ties right into that last unit, Leslie, that you were talking about, which is that Washingtonians citizenship, if I can paraphrase it down to that. So, and I think that's an important piece to be able to, think critically around that, to be able to figure out what does it mean to be a good citizen in the state and in our community.
We want kids to really think about that through all of our units, actually. So, how can we help kids to take informed action? So that civic engagement, right? I think the ways that we make sense of civic engagement is that I can vote. I can become involved in some kind of political process. I can write an initiative or write a bill. But I know that I vote. I've never missed a vote. Have you ever missed a vote?
No.
Not have. But if that's what we do, right? We do that as citizens, right? But there are so many ways for our kids to become connected to their communities and give them options for how they're going to make their classrooms or their schools or their communities better places. So all of our units have some kind of civic action component. So at the end of our first unit, for example, kids decide on the memorials, does George Wright really deserve a boulevard? I don't know. I think that you could argue it either way. And that's the idea, is we want to give kids big, compelling questions and say, you decide and make a recommendation. Because these 7th graders are going to be running things one day in our community. So we want them to be able to make these informed decisions and make recommendations and know who to reach out to. So, I think, and I've heard Warren Saylor say this, if we were to go to the city council and propose that George Wright Boulevard be renamed versus a 7th grader go to the Spokane City Council, it would be different. It would be received differently. So we really are encouraging kids. We want them to become involved. We want them to become voices in their communities. So that's part of the other intention of our units of study.
You were the 7th grader who'd get more movement on that initiative.
Who do you think would get more movement? Who do you think would get more movement?
I think Eric Wolfram Jr. would get a lot of
I
movement
know.
Definitely.
on there.
The 7th grader definitely would get more movement.
I think so, with the same points and that deep understanding along with it.
Well, and have they ever been presented from the youth about something that seems wrong?
Yeah.
They haven't, they've had adults come to them, but they've never had, we've learned this and now we've changed our perspective, or we have a perspective now.
Absolutely. You brought up Eric, my son. So I want to put my parent hat on.
Yes.
Because I do think, Eric had the wonderful opportunity to be in your class last year and go through this, and he loved it. Now, I know that some of it was Superstar Starla, but
Definitely.
at the same time, I think just that idea of teaching this differently than being able to take a look at a textbook and do the surface stuff. Because, again, we talked about that relevance piece. We're able to get the kids to dig a little bit deeper. He really enjoyed that. And I want to come back to that idea of, do you see that with the other kids? Are the other kids enjoying it? And not even, maybe enjoying it isn't the right word, but are they getting more out of it?
I think we talk about packets, and I don't love packets, so my students don't have them. They work for other teachers. They don't work for my kids, and so I think kids are going to have to get used to having all different types of teachers. But hopefully what we do as an OER committee, as curriculum writers, is that we present an opportunity to step outside of your packet, to step outside of the normal way that you would teach it and say, I have an idea that might inspire kids. They've read this text for the third, they've read a third text for the 3rd day in a row, and you change it and say, I'm going to have them do this, this, and this, because that's what our jobs are as teachers, is to ignite that fire in whatever subject we teach.
Right.
And once we get kids to buy into that, they'll do whatever we need them to do.
Yep. And I really do think, and again, I just appreciate your time with Eric.
I appreciate him.
And because, he did get that. I mean, to be able to be inspired around learning some of those pieces, it was a great thing. My mom was a history teacher, so you made her proud, made her happy that he was so excited about some of these things. We're getting down on our time. Again, I wish we had more time. We could probably continue to talk, because I know there are other things that I would love to chat with you guys about, some of the things. If somebody who happens to be watching this wants to find out a little bit more, what's the best way for them to get a hold of one of you or the district?
Well, our curriculum is all open source. We received grant funding from OSPI. I think
Okay.
I forgot to mention that, is that OSPI offers grant opportunities to design, develop, curate open educational resources. So Barbara Suits at OSPI has been our mentor throughout this process. So our stuff, because of this, the grant, the assurances is that this will be available. So
Right.
currently, our materials are being used in different areas around the state, and it's on the Washington OER Commons Hub. If you just Google that,
Wonderful.
that's one way to get it. And
Okay.
the other way is to email either of us, L. Heffernan at CVSD or svay@cvsd.org. And we're all in. I think that's the thing, is we really are. We would love to chat with anybody who's wanting to go rogue and be a little and break outside of the textbook.
That's right.
And not that textbooks are terrible.
No, but
I think that no teacher actually gives kids a textbook and says read this and answer
Yeah.
the questions. I think everybody works their magic, but ours
Wonderful.
is just a little different.
I think it's building the curriculum is also different than teaching the curriculum. And if I hadn't been on the committee, I might have looked and said, okay, well, and I had to read it, even though I'd helped build it. I have to go through and read what the essential questions are, what the standards are, what my success criteria is, and what the goal is. And that's what we really need teachers to do, is we have to invest our time to
Right.
understand what we're going to be teaching, because it's not a textbook anymore.
the more I'm in this profession, the more I understand that it's the adults in the classroom that make a huge difference. And so with that, great program. If anybody out there wants to find out more about it, please touch base with these two. Truly superstars for Central Valley School District. From professional and from a parent's point of view, thank you guys so much. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you.
A great conversation. And we'll see you next time on Education 101.
Education 101 is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is solely responsible for its content. Education 101 is brought to you by our friends at STCU. Ask Eric a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com.